All right. See you later.
Welcome to the Republican Professor. I'm Lucas Mather, and this is Curtis Olson.
Howdy.
We'd like to talk about the point of the Republican Professor. We're definitely on the side of America, but what does that mean? And I'm over here freezing my ass off in California. Curtis is in Texas.
We just had a snow day because Texans don't know what snow is. So we got 3 inches and had to shut everything down for a little bit. But we're back to normal now. Yeah, when I think of like what is the Republican Professor, you know, it's interesting. I think last week we had a discussion about this mug that I carry around, right? The leftist tears mug that Ben Shapiro puts out, which, I mean, since I tend to agree with much of what Shapiro, his positions are, I just kind of liked the mug. But then since having that discussion, I talked about it a lot with like my wife and with other friends. And I talked about the discussion. And I think that the takeaway really is that what that mug does, or that statement, the idea of leftist tears, what it does is it contributes, actually, unfortunately, to the polarization of the way things are in America right now. And that's really what we don't want to do. Republican Professor isn't intended to be polarizing, although as much as it's not intended, that's not our intention. I think it'll happen because of others. We can't control others, but we do want to try to put our best foot forward and not contribute to the polarization of things, but get people actually having discussions and intelligently addressing topics, right? Thoughtfully, you know, not just like constant conflagration, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's some of my
thoughts. That's good. That's good. The polarization thing is a strange topic. I mean, it's an odd thing to get a handle on. I'm not sure I have a handle on it, to be honest with you. There's a lot of discussion in certain circles about what causes polarization, what makes it worse. I don't think I have a good handle on that. I'm not sure I'm convinced of any particular answer. I've heard Dan Crenshaw, for example, talk about it on a recent podcast with a Harvard professor who taught his Congress class when he was at Harvard. I've read articles about it for years, and you know, I was on the campuses for so long, at least over a decade and a half in California, and to me, the campuses were incredibly polarizing before I heard anybody really talking about polarization. I experienced it every day of my life.
Yeah.
As a Republican on college campuses. I was berated for being a Republican by my superiors. You know, on work time, on the clock. And when it would have nothing to do with the productivity of the work I was doing. And that was back when George Bush was president. That was back when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor. We had a Republican governor, Republican president. And, you know, so that's the context for my looking at polarization. that's why when I see the mug that you're talking about, the leftist tears mug, I thought it was funny actually,
I did too. That's why I carried it.
because yeah, I mean, it's not that I don't care about Democrats crying. Um, it's possible my heart was hardened quite a bit because I had experienced so much abuse and I had seen the abuse
Mhm.
that they foisted on an institution that I love, which is higher education. And I feel like they've destroyed it. So, you know, everything from grade inflation on down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's something, it does seem that there is something polarizing about things that are true and things that are false.
Mhm.
I mean,
That's a
it
good point.
seems necessarily they are
Yeah.
polarized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Positive, negative.
That's
That we
true.
talk about the different poles
Fair
of,
enough. Yeah.
yeah,
Earth is polarizing.
exactly. Exactly. There's a lot of polarizing things. Um,
Yeah.
I think
Just
at
the
the
nature of it.
founding of our, what's that?
Well, so what you're saying is it's just the nature of things then?
Of certainly of some things, right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe even the nature of most things. Um,
This is my non-leftist tears mug I was just showing people. I have an associate's degree from Wayland Baptist
oh,
University,
nice.
Hawaii. So my credibility is I have an associate's degree of applied science.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I golly, I mean, just talking about the founding of our country, we were polarizing
Yeah,
from England, right? We
yeah.
were not wanting to pay taxes that were undue was polarizing to the
Hmm.
powers that be. Um, but it was right.
And later anti-federalists versus federalists,
Yeah. I mean,
the
and
Democratic
even
Republicans versus federalists.
being a slave owner or thinking that black people should be free, those are polarizing ideas,
Mhm.
right? There's nothing wrong
Yeah,
about being polarized, about being polarizing.
right.
There might be a wrong or right side of being of the polarization
Yeah,
that one wants to be on.
that's a really cool point. I was just listening to uh, an episode of a Denver Seminary podcast. I'm a graduate of Denver Seminary, where they were interviewing one of my former professors was interviewing the president, who I don't know. And I think it was last year. I don't listen to them in sequence, so I just kind of pop around and listen to whatever. I think it must have been from the election year. It must have been from, well, anyway, they were talking about polarization, and the assumption was from Mark Young, the president, was that polarization is bad and
Hmm.
Christians should not be polarizing. We should not contribute to polarization. And he wasn't pointing fingers at any party. He had sharp words for Republicans, people who, I don't, you get the sense that he doesn't like what President Trump had stood for, or what he embodied, I guess, would probably be a better way to say it. And so what you're saying is the opposite of that. Like, it's not, polarization itself is not bad.
Right.
Well, we're both Christians, so we look at the world from that lens. So it was that episode was a challenge to me to figure out what I really think that polarization is bad. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure,
Yeah.
honestly. I see what it did to the university, and it destroyed the university, I think. And I think the university, what they're pumping out into our culture is destroying our culture. But I'm not sure it's polarization itself that did that. I just happened to see that it was incredibly polarizing being on campus.
It seems to me that extremism, uh, the intemperance of things, is what's bad. If you want to talk about something being bad, you know, keep pushing for one end of the spectrum over the other. To me, that's not a good idea.
Mm.
And if it's not a good idea, I think the polar opposite of good would be bad. Um, but that
Extremism in
aside,
the defense of liberty is no vice.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, yeah, I think that it's certainly not. I don't think polarization. I would fall on the side that polarization isn't bad. Kind of like, I mean, that falls in line with other thoughts I have, right? Like guns aren't bad. It's very similar logical flow. It's what you do with it's what the agent does with the thing that makes it bad or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the thing that's bad, that's been made bad. It's the agency, the will, the choosing. You know, that's what's bad or not. Poor choice or good choice.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I want to be on the side of goodness, not on the side of evil. But I think that's what a lot of people get hung up on. What is good? What is evil? Some people think, you know, like little kids. You know, I've got 5 of them running around, and often, what's evil to them is things that tend to look to me like personal responsibility. You know, um, being made to clean your room after you've not done anything, and just constantly throwing things in there for a week, and then the Saturday comes and chores are, you know, what does your room look like? Your bed's not made. You got all this crap in your closet piled high, and you got all this crap under your bed. Well, we got to pull it all out, you know, because it'll just get worse and worse and worse. Well, I'm the worst person in the world at that moment. I'm evil to them because I'm taking away from their fun and their relaxation and, you know, whatever else it might be that they want to do. So I think those are some of the things that come into play with when we talk about things that are wrong with the left and the right. You know, the left thinks some things are evil that the right thinks are good, and the right thinks some things are evil that the left thinks are good. So
Yeah.
that's polarizing.
Right. Sometimes I think that the leftist people that have taken over education and the incentive structures that they've created in education that have just contributed to destroying it, and by extension contributed to destroying America, I think, to some extent. I'm not sure they really do believe that Republicans are evil. I'm not sure about that. Maybe, I mean, it's possible, but like, for example, it was very common to hear that Republicans are racists, for example, but I always had a hard time believing they really believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would explain why they hate Republicans, but I'm not sure that they hate racism. And I like, okay, so what I would do is I would ask my students, why is racism bad? And they would be surprised by the question initially, but it's pretty common to have your professor challenge your beliefs. So, well, at least in my classroom, I'm not sure about other classrooms, but they could never answer the question. They never knew, the students at least never knew the answer why racism is bad, unless they were homeschooled. Then they had pretty good handle on why it was bad. But my Democrat students could never answer the question why racism is bad. So I just didn't understand why. Okay, so they know you're supposed to say it's bad,
Right.
and so they say it loud. They act as if they really have this deep-seated belief. But when you ask them to explain why something is racism, and then actually prior to that, why is racism bad? And first of all, they can't link some specific thing with racism very convincingly. And then secondly, they can't even tell you why racism is bad. It's a disaster. I mean, so I'm not sure. There's this other weird phenomenon happening where um, people, it's almost like there's a show. You're in the middle of like a play or something, or it's, I don't like to say a play. It's like a show on TV or something, like
The Truman Show.
yeah, where everybody's playing some kind of part. And I'm wondering why. I just, why do you have that part? I don't understand why you think it's your job to keep Republicans off campus. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
even, I'm not even convinced you really, first of all, know what you're talking about. And then secondly, really believe. I just feel like you're trying to fit in somehow with some
Yeah.
kind of script that somebody else wrote, and you don't even know who wrote it. So it's just like, for me, the Republican professor is trying to help people, having a toolkit or a resource to invite reflection and care
Mm-hmm.
on things that matter politically in everything that touches on politics.
Which is everything.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if I mean, if we were able to help encourage the idea that somebody could hear about a website that's called The Republican Professor, and their first thought is not, oh my gosh, evil bad, or oh my gosh, that's great, but their first thought is, I wonder what that's about. You know, let me explore and listen and come to my own conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on what I see or hear.
I think for these like type of talks that we're doing, it would be helpful to have a third voice in here, someone that we can have a conversation with that's about some specific thing they know a lot about, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the vision, is we're going to bring people in to talk and interview and hopefully do long form discussion. If we, there should be no hurry, you know, with
Right.
us. We're not flashy. We're not interested in all the bells and whistles and stuff like that. We're just interested in getting right to something in a substantive way. Helps us move the ball down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we got a few good people lined up, I think.
Do we have them scheduled already?
No, nobody's scheduled yet, but in conversation.
Okay.
Once we get them scheduled, I'll feel a little more comfortable, talking about that here.
Okay.
I don't want I don't want to put out hopes and maybes,
Right.
Yeah. So
So when Joe Biden gets back to you, I'm sorry, I mean, when,
that's right.
all right, cool. Well, I guess that's all we have today, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good little intro.
Okay. See you.
See you later.
Okay.